the Drew Barrymore who was Drew Barrymore as a teenager, because she was 16 years old. And she had quite the little reputation back in the day, which is not the case now. And just getting her to show up for work on time was a problem, because she would like to have a driver like she could have on a movie like E.T., but on a movie like Far From Home, we're literally on location in the desert, walking out of our accommodations and going across the street to work. But on this movie, it involves getting in a car and driving across town, which means she's getting in her car and driving across town. And she wasn't making it on time, so I became her driver. And I would go and knock at the front door, and she'd seldom be ready, and I'd get her to wake up and hassle her through the day and move her off to the set. And she was going through the process of emancipating herself, but it had not been completed, so she was still required to have a studio teacher. And one day in particular, and I'll never forget this day, George Newbern is buying his first house. And I see at lunch, as I insinuate myself right into their conversation with my tray and sit down with the two of them, I see that she is giving 16-year-old Drew Barrymore is giving George Newbern advice on negotiating his real estate loan. And she's talking about the points and buying this down and doing that. And she's giving really good investment advice to George. The next thing is we were on a location in Sierra Madre that day for an opulent estate that was out there that we rented for one day. And there's Drew on the phone to Lee Salters, her publicist. And she's directing Lee, and no, we don't want to be on the cover of this magazine. We're holding out for People. And then after People, we're going to come right behind it with blah, blah, blah. And she's laying out exactly her magazine strategy. Now, the next thing that happens that day is the studio teacher comes up to me and says, Drew's really struggling with geography. I mean, I don't want to fail her or anything, but you got to tell her she's got to do a little work here. And so I go over to Drew, who's just been given real estate advice to George Newbern. She's just been telling Lee Salters, who doesn't need any advice, how to run her campaign. And then she looks me in the eye after I bring the news from the teacher to her, and she goes, oh, it's all those M states that are in the middle of the country. I can never get them straight. Because you have Montana and Minnesota and Michigan, and what does that mean to somebody who lives in a blue state? Nothing, especially when you're 16.